Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the comments from the citizen present, and it's limited to 3 minutes per speaker. So anybody who wants to speak. Okay, so no one is, and the next item is the approval of the consent agenda. I need a motion.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next one on the agenda is the agreements. Task Order 17.01 to Engineering Services Agreement dated 12/1/15 with Strand Engineering for Market West parking lot.
Move approval is recommended by Finance.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, so I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next item on the agenda is award of bid to Johnson and Sons paving for trail rehabilitation project.
Move approval is recommended by PRFC and Finance.
It is
CLC. I'm
CLC
sorry.
and Finance.
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, so any discussion? So I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So motion passes. So under miscellaneous, the first item is cancel July 4th, 2017 Common Council meeting staff.
Move approval.
Okay, second. Any comments? Mike, you want to say anything?
Well, we hope you have a blast that night.
Okay.
That's the kind Susan talked about.
Okay, well, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so the motion passes. So the next one is the referral for development of the City Ethics Board, and I'm going to ask Larry to explain it, so.
Okay. Well, the state statutes governing ethics of municipal public officials lay out a series of standards. One of the things that they allow is for municipalities to adopt local ordinances that also deal with the state standards, and you can impose your own standards as you see fit. One of the provisions in the state law is the possibility of creating a separate ethics board. Now, so far the city has been fortunate that there haven't been a lot of ethics concerns that have been made. Historically, how things have been handled have been to where, for example, an individual wanted an opinion on what would happen if that person did X, Y, or Z, they're allowed, with or without the creation of an ethics board, to apply for a confidential advisory opinion from me, or my office at least, to provide them with information for guidance. The advantage of having an ethics board is that there would be a body which would be empowered to process complaints against public officials. Right now, as I understand the process, Mike handles whatever complaints come in, unless they're about him, not that there have been any, in which case they come to me.
We haven't had any, right?
We haven't had any.
Okay. Just want to clarify.
Yeah, no, that's important. In any event, my experience with ethics boards is the good news is when you don't need them very much. So in another community I represent, they had an ethics board on the books for about 15 years, never had a complaint. Then they had complaints against 2 members of the governing body. So they're not really the kind of things that Mike could handle, because the Common Council is his employers, not people he comments about. So they asked me what to do. I said, well, convene a meeting of the Ethics Board. And he said, well, we've never appointed one. So they did. They appointed one, and they've appointed it ever since. It processed the complaints, and then they haven't had a lot of business since. They meet regularly now. They meet once a year to convene, and if they don't have any complaints, they don't meet anymore. But this is one of these bodies which, my concern with this is that with the increasingly low regard that some citizens have for their elected officials, some might, as hard as that might seem, think that there was something that the Common Council or other officials might, they think, be worthy of being processed by such a board. If that happened right now, we do not have such a body appointed. And that's the gap that an ethics board would fill. Just so you know, for public safety issues, that's already covered by the Police and Fire Commission, so that they are off the table. They've already got everything they need. This would be for all other public employees. It's an option for the council, and in my opinion, when you need it, you need it. When you don't need it, it's probably not very busy. But that's my view of it.
Any question? Yeah, Joanna?
So, Larry, would the motion that the council should make tonight is to refer to you for drafting of how the commission would operate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or should it go to license and ordinances, which would
Well, it's
refer
going
it
to
to
go to
you?
them anyway,
Okay.
but this just saves a step.
So this would take care of violations by us in addition to staff and personnel.
Yeah, I would.
Because don't we already have a code of ethics for staff and personnel?
Yes.
And that would come before the personnel committee?
For an ethics violation, is that how we normally do it right now? I'm not sure.
Well, we haven't had an ethics complaint, but in our ethics code, it's page 31 of the ordinance, says that any questions as to interpretation of any provisions of this code of ethics chapter shall be referred to the city attorney. So that's what we have in place now.
But the question was, if, say, someone thought that a city employee had violated their ethical duty, so it was a complaint rather than an interpretation, that would be something that you would be processing right now.
If it were for an employee, if it were for an elected official.
No, we're specifically asking for employee.
Right.
So,
I
but,
would handle it internally. I do an internal investigation of the complaint, and then
And if something
bring
needed
it
to be
the
done.
Personnel committee and possibly to the full council.
Are we saying that that would stay the same then? That this ethics board would?
It certainly could.
Just for the,
I mean, my experience is the higher profile stuff is the kind of thing where you really need an ethics board. But for routine matters, and you could certainly write it to, I would guess the way it would read would be that appeals of staff complaints would probably be to the ethics board rather than to the personnel committee. But again, I would say most of those things would probably be handled internally, never reach the ethics board.
yes, Joanna?
I'll make a motion that we refer to the city attorney for the drafting of a ethics commission.
Need a second? Okay, any discussion?
Larry,
Yes, Mark?
how many ethics complaints have you received in the past 2 years?
I'm not going to say I have my finger on the pulse, but in the communities I represent.
No, for this committee, or for this community,
Zero.
Zero.
0.
And that was true in this other community until there was a complaint. In fact, several complaints against two members of the governing body. You just never know when they're going to come. That's the problem.
So it's like insurance policy, that's what you're doing.
Well, it's putting a mechanism in place to deal with it.
Mhm.
That's right.
Yes, that's the bit.
I think this is a really good idea. I have to say that just having grown up in my father's teacher teaches ethics at the law school, and just having that constantly, lawyers and politicians, and I think in general it's something that is hopefully never needed, but should be in place if it is.
And what would be the
Yes.
makeup of the committee too, or the ethics board?
Larry?
Those are all citizen?
Well, it would not be members of the council.
Right.
Typically, it is citizens. My experience has been, if you can find a local attorney to chair it, maybe you won't need the attorney to staff it, except in rare circumstances. It's the typical find your public spirited people. And if you're lucky, they won't have to make a very large time commitment until they really have to make a large time commitment. So as things continue as they are, they may not have a whole lot to do.
Mark?
I just want to go back to this, this process. If there was an ethics complaint today, how would that be handled? If it was not personnel related, if it was a member of council, how would an ethics complaint be handled today?
I would refer it to the city attorney.
And I'm very poorly suited for that, because what you really need to do at some point is have a hearing where the complainant makes his or her points about the conduct in question, the elected official defends their position, and then the board makes a decision. It's the kind of thing that, worst case scenario might even be with a court reporter, or at least recording the meeting and all that.
Would any of this be done in a closed session, or would it be required to be open?
Have to be open.
Any more questions? So if there are no more questions, I will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Larry. The next item on the agenda is 2018 Budget Development Calendar. That's Finance Committee. Bill,
I'll move we defer this.
Second.
any discussion? So I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. The next one is the ordinances, first reading, and the final action may be taken upon approval of the motion to suspend rules under section 1.07. So the first one is an ordinance to amend section 15.04. It's related to 2-hour parking on Ravine Drive, LNO.
I would move approval and suspension of the, what is it? Rules under section 1.07.
Okay,
Second.
okay, any discussion? Okay, so I call question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. The next one is planning and zoning. 5-year street improvement plan, Public Works Committee, Plan Commission, Finance Committee, either of those.
Move approval is recommended by finance.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? So if there's no discussion, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next is item 2, request for tax incremental financing district 5 funding for traffic signal at Allen Boulevard and Maywood Avenue.
Move approval is recommended by finance.
Second.
Any discussion? Eileen, do you want to say, is the line Eileen here? Well, yeah, there was some questions about it, but I guess they have been answered in Plan Commission. So if there is no more discussion, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next one is recommendations and proposals, and the first one is Fund Balance Policy, Finance Committee.
For this,
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next one is next Downtown Plaza Naming Rights Policy, Finance Committee.
Move we defer this one?
Need a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Can I ask a question? I know this is deferred until finance next week, but just Abby. So this, at the very bottom of this downtown plaza naming rights policy, it says that you recommend 1, 2, and 3, but not 4, which I understand. Does that say that if some wonderful donor were to buy the properties and donate to them, we would not allow us to name the plaza after them? Or if T-Wall randomly decided to donate to us, we would not be naming the plaza after him?
We haven't had any wonderful donors like that come forward. We have heard that there's someone who's interested in donating $250,000 for the plaza and has expressed an interest in naming rights. Our recommendation would be that this be more of a general plaza for the benefit of the full city and not be named after any individual. I suppose if someone were to come forward, even if the council decided to adopt a policy like this, you would have the authorization to have final authority for the naming of all community facilities as you do. So you could certainly decide to change your mind. But at this point, our recommendation is that we would, once the plaza was designed and we had cost estimates for individual features, we would bring forward a menu of options for items that might include naming rights, but not for the overall plaza.
Okay, so I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes.
That was to defer, right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's defer. Motion to defer passes. Next one is resolutions. So the first one is 2017-16, approving final assessment for the University Avenue resurfacing project, Public Works Committee, Finance Committee.
move approval recommended by finance.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next one is 2017-17, authorizing the allocation of additional funds from tax incremental financing district number 5 for the Allen Boulevard and Maywood Avenue traffic signal project.
Move
Finance
approval is
Committee.
recommended by finance.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next is 2017-18, approving the assignments of 2016 year-end fund balance, Finance Committee.
Move approval is recommended by finance.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next one is committee appointments. So the first one is elder committee appointments.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. So the next one is citizen committee appointments.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, just the thing that you noticed this morning, Gurdeep,
Yes.
inadvertently, we left Han's name on a couple of committees, and those are both places where we need replacement.
One was on bike ped and, yes,
Committee.
So
yes.
Hans isn't
Oh, I
willing to
thought
do
there was,
those.
I
Yeah.
thought maybe they were
Hans.
appointments. Okay.
No, that's the-
Hans
for
told me
the
that he
plan
doesn't
commission
intend
too.
to stay on any committees for
Okay.
at least the next year.
So the plan commission will make that recommendation after the next plan commission meeting.
For bike ped.
For which one?
But there's another one with Hans.
And then
Golf.
there's the golf, and I appointed somebody to the golf, so.
Who did you appoint?
What did you appoint?
Dennis, oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not in this one, yes. So you will have a,
Oh, okay.
May 24th is the next golf
Okay,
committee.
so,
With those additions, yeah.
yes, Howard.
Mike, question for you.
we're talking,
Has somebody,
Right.
as a normal process at this time of the year,
so he's got,
gone through all of these and vetted every name that's on here?
oh,
So that
designated,
it's
okay, got it, yep.
fairly good.
I, as staff, don't participate, haven't participated in that, except for when the mayor asked me about positions. You know, with Kurt Sonnentag, the same thing. I didn't get involved with those unless I was asked. But it's the mayor's job, as I see it, to review all of the applications and to interview. And to the best of my knowledge, Pradeep, you have interviewed most of the.
Yes, all the applications which I had, I have gone through every application at least once. And I have interviewed every person which I have appointed either in person or on telephone, everyone. And some of them, they had wanted to be on plan commission, and well, you could have only 2 people on plan commission, and I have asked them specifically that, you know, I can put you on this committee, is it agreeable to you, and can you make the meetings? And I told them when that committee was going to meet, and they say yes. So in every case, I have gotten their permission.
So to address your question, Howard, we and staff does not go through each of these applications to determine the person that you want on their application. We leave that to the mayor and the council.
Okay.
I haven't checked their colleges, that if their degrees and that stuff is accurate, so I don't think that's
required.
way beyond my responsibility,
That's
so.
not my intent to have by the question. If I look at the other jurisdictional committees at the end of the list, my wife's name is on there as mayor's appointment, and she hasn't had that appointment for years. And it just kind of tripped me off as to, is there any other stuff on this page or on here
Which
that,
one was that, Howard?
other jurisdictional committees?
Yeah, she's on that,
Middleton Community?
I'm just
Yeah.
curious,
Yeah, and
because
that-
she thought it was kind of interesting that
The
she was
Community
appointed.
Endowment Committee?
and that doesn't get reappointed. It was appointed at one time, and now,
Yeah, none of those are accurate currently. We should take that off, Lori. The Community Endowment Committee has gone off on their own.
Okay.
These were the initial
Okay.
appointments.
That-
and we
that-
just
That's where,
taken that off.
Oh,
that's where I was going.
Good
with
point
my-
there, Howard.
Yeah. Well done, Howard.
so who
And-
is on that and where is
Yeah, I
it?
usually don't touch that bottom half.
Because I get letters from them asking for money.
no, mayor has no authority on those committees anymore, so.
And if
No,
I,
but could you explain what they're doing now and who's on it? On the Middleton Community Endowment
Okay,
Committee?
the community endowment was started, and it was my proposal at the time, which was adopted by the council and the school board and the chamber, to each appoint 3 from their respective memberships. And so we had 3 city appointments. These were the 3. 3 from the Chamber of Commerce board, or the Chamber of Commerce recommendations, and 3 from the school district. I haven't really kept up with how well they keep to that formula now. I think what they do is works. Anything you would add to that, Dan?
I believe they're meeting next week, I'll check.
Who's on it?
Come up to the mic,
Can you tell
though.
us who's on it?
Pretty sure Andy Lewis is,
Yeah, well, I know Andy is.
pretty sure Andy Lewis is still on it.
Yes.
Ray Riddle, I believe.
Oh,
Kurt Bessard, Adrian Machina.
are they talking about MEDC? Oh,
Beyond that, I don't know.
okay.
I think from the city part, it's Andy and Sherry, and I don't know who is the third one.
Were you saying Sherry is no longer on
No, she
the
is.
endowment, or she is?
She knows nothing about it, so just curious. You can deal with that however you want. Yeah, one area that you might consider expanding on right above it is MADC. Put some names in there. Just so somebody walking in and looking at this can see what we're talking about,
Right.
who their contacts
The
is.
MADC is not a city committee.
Take it off of there.
All we do is appoint one member of the council, and that was in the council appointments listed under District 2, which is currently vacant.
So it would be inappropriate to put all the names in there?
You could. it's just-
'Cause they're not all appointed, it would
make seem like
just-
it's a city committee,
Well,
and it's not.
Well, it is or it isn't, and if there's a name on there, I would think that, I think it'd be, I think for the public's perception, that the list be complete, that's all. I won't say anything else.
Well,
But it's not
there's
a-
very good
There's one.
reasons that it doesn't look like it's a city committee.
The top, the top.
Very
it
good
says
reasons.
City committee.
It's not a city committee.
If you go up to it,
Howard,
Wait a
on the
minute.
top of the page, it says other jurisdictional committees.
yeah, some are filled in, some aren't, that's all.
Yeah, but these are ones that are from other places, like Lakes and Watershed is a county one. Cities and Villages is a separate one. So we don't have authority over these.
Up under ad hoc city committees, is this how we expand the number of people in a committee?
The ad hoc city committees don't have they are not by the ordinance. There's
You
no
can
ordinance,
expand
there's
them.
no limit, so
Workforce,
within reason.
it's not,
Right.
you
It's an ad
just
hoc.
expanding back, adding a half dozen names to it.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
we would have to approve that, but
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with the three
Okay.
additional.
I just was wondering if that's how we expand,
Yeah.
and then if we have to contract.
It's between the mayor and the council as to what your preference is. There is no limitation by ordinance on the workforce housing.
Who are we going to appoint for weed commissioner?
No, that's not a mayor.
Used to be Scotty.
Did we already have that? on
It's
the,
weed commissioner, Scott Ellerson, appointed by mayor for a term of 1 year.
Oh, it is, huh.
Yes.
Well, we will appoint it next time, so we'll find somebody, so. So Laurie, let's do that.
No. I have helped him.
Technically
not retired until today.
Wow, he's still on the payroll.
Scott's technically the weed commissioner now.
No, he's not, because it's 8 o'clock at night, he only works till 4:30. He's gone.
He wasn't retired at the drafting of this.
So typically what we would do is have the building inspector be the weed commissioner.
Building inspector.
Unless Chuck Polk really wants it.
Maybe we can show of hands for which guy we want.
He is the man with the gun.
Or the man with the weed, I don't know.
You can see he's very excited about it.
Oh, that's funny.
Get me to pull.
Okay, any more discussion? If there no,
I just want to say too, the endowment for the Public Lands Committee would fall in that same category. It's really not a city committee
And it's approved by
any
council.
longer. It was approved by council, but
The
it's been
appoint-
launched off on its own. So I don't think we want to make it look like it's a city committee, because
Right.
similar to MADC, it's independent. They will be operating independent. They will not have public meeting
So
postings.
council will no longer appoint those members.
Correct.
For which one?
Who
Sorry.
does appoint them then in the future?
that's the stormwater, and there are 2, 3 committees.
As a-
MADC
Like
does.
their own corporate structure.
Yes.
They call for volunteers as well.
Any more discussion, Mike?
I guess I am the only one discussing.
Okay, well,
No, I appreciate Howard bringing that up.
What?
Sharing.
Yeah,
Retired.
Listen,
that's good that we had that discussion.
We love
Thank
your
you.
he
way.
said, "You go talk to Davis."
That is an artifact of history that nobody has until now, so thank you.
okay, so if there's no more discussion, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Before we adjourn, I have few comments to make that there was a overwhelming response from people to serve on committees. And we are so limited. For every committee, for plan commission, there were 10 people who wanted to serve, and we had only 2 openings. And 7 of them were well qualified, and, I moved them to some of the other committees. For youth commission, there were 5 people, and for sustainability, there are 3 people waiting. One of them has been waiting for some time, Deb Weitzel. So I'm asking either I could bring this for a referral to the Eleanor next time, or somebody could make a motion now that we should look at the committees, because the city has expanded. Nobody has looked at these committees for 20 years. So many of them. So city has expanded, our population is 19,000, and there are younger people who want to serve on these committees, and this is wonderful. So what they say, if there's no opening, there were only 5 or 6 positions which I could fill, and I have a whole file of people who want to serve. So I think there's a need for us to look at that, which committees we would want to expand and which we don't. So does anybody want to make a motion, or we put on the agenda for the next meeting?
Why doesn't the mayor make recommendations on those committees that he thinks might be subject to change?
Well, another consideration might be looking at where we might need some advice that we don't currently have, that doesn't fit well, and whether we need some other committee structures, like the Ethics Commission, I think was a good idea. Are there other things like that we just don't have the right fit? Like the elections, we've asked in the past, does Lori need like a sounding board for elections? For access and those type of issues, not the regulations part of it, but the access to our polling locations. So something like that. I'd rather do that than expand the current.
Okay, I will put the list together as Howard suggested and as you suggested, and bring it to the city council at the next meeting then. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn, unless somebody has some other come.
You wanted who to bring what to the city council?
Pardon me? We will have a list, some of the committees which we want to appoint, and then Howard suggested that I should look at the committees and come up with suggestions which I want to expand or we want to expand. So those 2 suggestions. Okay, any other comments from anyone from the city council? Okay, need a motion to adjourn? Huh?
Penny's celebration party on May 16th. If you have an RSVP.
Okay, all right. So now the motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.